I do know that it's a big part of Seattle history.
Yeah, yeah.
That a, a visitor here once told me that um, the WTO protests were taught in his public policy course.
Cool.
And you said you're like you have a master's and
Okay, so now, so
you have a
okay, if you really want to know the
PhD.
real story, so I'm a
I've
person long-term
I know
recovery.
nothing what about the WTO except that it was in like 2000.
1999. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. So in at that time, I mean, we
But you saw
Atlanta's
it on the news. You
yeah.
were just telling me.
Okay, so where you're just to give you context, I'm sitting in an area where the heart of what I call the heart of the Confederacy, right, where we have certain narratives going on, and I'm very much immersed in those narratives, which are nationalist, isolationist, not aware of imperialism or corporate power, believing in trickle down, believing in every person for themselves, and just narratives like that. So the free speech television would run 24-hour news during this WTO, the World Trade Organization protests, which I didn't have a clue what was going on. I don't know. I don't know what the World Trade Organization is. I don't know anything. But in Atlanta, I'm exposed. So I was hearing all these people in the streets talking about globalization and imperialism and the environment and unions and workers' rights. And I was baffled. Like, I didn't hardly know what was happening. But then, yeah, I would turn it to the mainstream, like, it's your CNN or whatever, even, which is sad. Today they might do better, but then they didn't. And they would be just um, playing up the violence that was occurring between the police and activists. But free speech television was covering conversations that we're actually having in the streets with some of the, like, what do they call, ambassadors of the World Trade, meetings. I mean, that wouldn't even happen today, right? Like, the police would keep ministers and protesters away from each other, but they were actually capturing this in the independent media, and you were seeing activists who were had their arms, glued into each other, those barriers they were creating, and then conversating with ministers and having intelligent conversations about their knowledge about sustainable development. And at this time, I know nothing. I ended up, it was a spark for me to get sober. I got sober. I went and got a master's degree. I did my thesis on policing protest and the militarization of police. And I went and got my PhD, and I did my PhD on self change through social change. And my travels are just related to this because it just transformed me, and it kind of started with Oprah, to be honest with you. It started with Oprah, but the WTO protests of Seattle and the coverage of that was monumental.
Wow.